Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today's lesson is understanding the governments. This is your social studies textbook unit number 4, lesson number 2. You can find it in your textbook page number 122. Let's move on to the objective of the lesson. The objective of the lesson says that you should be able to compare different forms of the modern government and learn about the structures and tiers of the government in a democracy at the end of this lesson. Here comes our first question. It says that what is the difference between a country and a state? A country is a land, a physical land with its defined territorial boundaries belonging to a specific community, human community, or a large human group. So we call it a country. For example, Egypt is a country and it belongs to Egyptians. It has defined borders, and the land beyond the borders of Egypt does not belong to the Egyptians. So it belongs to another other human communities. For example, Libya in the west, Sudan in the south, and Palestine in the east. Whereas a state is something, an institution that a community creates for organizing its society and maintenance of peace and order. The reason of creating the state or creating this institution is that every member of the community should remain under control. A controlled behavior is required to keep peace and order. For example, for the sake of organizing their society, Egyptians created their own state with its own set of rules, and these rules are not the same in all over the states in the world. The rules are different in different states, which are there according to the wishes of the people living in those communities. So this is the difference between a country and the state. Now we move on to the next question, which says that what is the difference between a state and a government, because the state needs to perform its function. So we need to know how the state performs its function. Let's move on to the next slide. So here's the question. It says how state performs its responsibilities. As we know that we gave some responsibilities to the state, and these responsibilities are that the people should remain safe, people should have prosperity, people should have opportunities, uh, they want to live a peaceful life. How this is possible? So basically this is the responsibility of the state, to make it possible for the people to live a peaceful life, and the state actually performs these functions with the help of its government. So the government is a kind of machinery, it's a kind of mechanism which is employed by the state to perform these functions. In other words, you can say a state fulfills these responsibilities through government, providing schools, hospitals, roads, jobs, providing safety, and punishing those people who break the laws. Also, these are basically the responsibilities of the state. There are so many other responsibilities. Basically, the domain of the state has been extended as compared to the past. Now we have so many new jobs, new roles, and state have assumed so many new responsibilities. 5,000 years ago, the jobs of the states were very few. Today, the jobs have increased to so many numbers. So these are the jobs which state performs with the help of the government. Summary of this slide is that a government is a tool for the state by which the state performs its responsibilities. Our second question today is that what are different types of the governments that are available all over the world? The first major type of the government is monarchy. In this kind of the government, the ruler is usually a monarch or a king, and that guy is not elected by the popular vote. The examples are Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, UAE, and Denmark. The power to rule the country is held by the king himself. Although there are different ways how the king performs his job, they vary from place to place. In the case of United Kingdom, you can have definitely a question that if the United Kingdom is a monarchy, then why there is a prime minister? who runs the government? The answer to this question is that in theory, United Kingdom is still a monarchy, but in practice, it is a democracy where the power to run the state is delegated by the crown. By the crown mean by the queen or the king to the prime minister who is elected by the people. So in this way, the government is responsible to the people as well. And if the government is not performing its job, the people can bring the new prime minister. Next kind of the government is republic. It's a type of the government in which the people they elect the parliament. Parliament is basically a department or an institution which is responsible to make the laws for the country. And if the people believe that the parliament is not performing its job, they can kick it out and bring a new parliament. Most of the countries in the world they are democratic republic. We have another kind of the government, it is called federation. Federation is a type of the government in which the power to rule the country or to run the state is shared between the central government, which is in the capital, and the provincial government. There are states, for example, in USA. The example of USA is given for your easiness because the central government in USA have some certain powers and the regional governments or the state governments they have their own powers to run their own states. One state cannot interfere in the affairs of another state, whereas the central government has the powers in certain areas where it can interfere in the affairs of the state governments, and in certain areas it cannot interfere in the affairs of the state governments. So this kind of the government is called federation or the federal government. Another kind of the government is commonwealth. It is a kind of political community founded for the common good. For the common good means that, for example, let's say Australia was once a colony of Britain. When Britain winded up their colonies and they gave freedom to the people of Australia, but people of Australia still believe that the English Queen is their head of the state. Although they have their independence, they have their own rules, and they have everything of their own, but still they believe that British Queen is their head of state. So they created a commonwealth. Communism is a type of the government in which the power to run the state is administered by a single party whose ideology is communist. Yani party believes in communist ideology. What is communism? Actually, you will study this in detail in higher grades. But at the moment, you must need to know that a communism is type of the system in which it says that the wealth of the country should be distributed equally among the citizens. There are different means you will study in detail. At the moment, you need to know that what countries are communist. The examples are China, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and many more. So we have a new question here. It says that why do states need the governments? Basically, as we discussed before, that the governments are the tools for states to perform their jobs. For the sake of implementing the important decisions, the states they need the governments. If the decisions are left in the hands of all the public individually, there will be confusion and they will not be able to make the correct decisions about a certain issue. Everyone will have his own decision or his own opinion. So, a few people are given the responsibility to take and implement important decisions. They do this for the well-being of the community members, because if all the community members are given the freedom to make choices of their own, they will just be in a confusion. So state actually takes this responsibility for the welfare of its people. Basically, state has the responsibility to maintain law and order, and if everybody is given the freedom to do whatever he wants, there will be disorder and chaos. So state has the responsibility to implement peace and order, and for this reason the government is given the power to implement this, to discuss or to address this issue. The responsibility of the state is to provide services to its citizens. So definitely the government is one of the way by which the state provides these services in a better manner, in an organized manner. The government is a mechanism which actually calculates everything, how it can be done in a better way. Another reason that why we need the government is that to maximize the productivity of natural resources. If the natural resources are utilized without any consideration to what is important and what is not important, they will be wasted. So government makes actually priorities that where we need to use this thing and where we need to save this thing. And basically another main responsibility of the government is to maintain relationships with other states. And now we have one of our most important question, that how the government performs. How? The question is how. Basically, every government around the world today stands on three pillars: legislative, executive, and judicial. The job of the legislative is to make the laws. Parliament, usually in many countries, they are bicameral. One is upper house and the other one is lower house. They make the laws for the state. Executive is the branch of the government which implements the laws made by the legislative branch, and they are responsible to perform all the other jobs which state needs to do. So they are composed of different ministries, cabinet, and grassroots level organizations. Judiciary is the third main pillar of the government. The job of the judiciary is to protect the laws of the countries and to impose punishments those who violate the laws. Basically, this is the job of the courts. So every country has a set of courts whose job is to implement the laws and to impose the punishments against the violations. The new question is that what is the difference between power and authority? Basically, power is something that you have the ability which makes you capable of achieving anything in a good way or a bad way. But the authority is kind of a positive way of using power. Basically, authority is entrusted to a person who is given some responsibilities, and unless he will not use this power, he will not be able to fulfill his responsibilities. The difference between the power and authority is that if you use your power in a bad way, there will be confrontation and there will be trouble. But if you are authorized to use this power, the other person cannot challenge you. The example is a police officer. For example, if a police officer asks some guy to move to the police station because he believes that this guy has committed some crime, the person in the discussion cannot refuse to accept his orders because he believes that the police officer is entitled to use this power as an authority. So he will be not confronting to him. As a result, there will be no trouble or no chaos. So the authority actually is something to which the people are generally inclined to obey, whereas a power normally in someone's hand, which is not legal, creates confrontations. The moral right of using the power is basically called legitimacy, legal use of power. So illegal use of power is only when a person is authorized or when a person is entitled to use this power. For example, if a government has legitimate authority, it can delegate this authority to different people who are given responsibilities to perform different jobs, and they are entitled to use this power whenever it is needed. If the government is misusing its authority or power delegated to it by its people, people have the right to disobey or even to replace this unfair government and bring a new one through defined procedures. Whenever the law fails in a country, the result is anarchy. So every country needs to follow the authority which is defined in the procedure and use of powers where the people are supposed to follow in a prescribed manner. In Saudi Arabia, Shura Council is one of the organ of the state which is responsible to give directions and opinions to king and executive branch of the state in important decision-making processes. So, although it's a monarchy, but still the system in Saudi Arabia works through shared responsibilities and authorities entitled to state by its people. That is the end of the lesson. You should know that how the state works, how the government works, and we will come back with the second stage of the lesson with a new PowerPoint. Thank you very much. See you soon. Hope to see you again.